Welcome back to our journey through the evolution of first-person shooters. In this episode, we dive into the golden era of FPS games from 2001 to 2009, a period dominated by two titans of the genre, Halo and Call of Duty. We will cover the first decade of the Halo series today. Halo didn't just entertain, it revolutionized how we play and experience shooters. Let's explore how this franchise shaped the FPS landscape forever. Halo Combat Evolved was released for the original Xbox as an introductory game for the console. It brought forward some creative FPS aspects that have been adopted by games up until present day. Starting off with the regenerative shields. These shields act as another defensive layer like armor in early FPS, although they are not picked up and instead regenerate fully after a short period of avoiding hits. Any hits taken when the shield is gone will damage your health that may regenerate only from health pickups. This added feature also relieves the player of constantly searching for health pack and armor pickups that become scarce at times. Though the health pack is still present, it does not impact the game nearly as much as prior FPS. This wasn't the only radical change Halo pulled for the genre. The next one was also one I questioned when I first played. A weapon limit has been introduced where only two can be carried at a time, with no doubling up on one type. You can switch through dropped enemy weapons which are more abundant than traditional FPS. GoldenEye had no limit to carry and you can usually find up to 10 weapon types per mission. Decisions need to be made in the Halo campaigns when selecting the weapon of choice, and usually the type of mission will help you figure it out. Sometimes it just comes down to which weapon has the most available ammo. Certain missions included large-scale battles that involved vehicles like the Warthog and Ghosts to aid you in traveling swiftly or shredding through the enemies. These large-scale battles had scores of enemy types, different vehicles, and the sheer openness of the environment made it quite unique at the time. Lastly, something I found that was quite a step up for the FPS was the story.
Give your construct to me, or I will be forced to take it from you.
Usually, up until the release of Halo, you didn't really care if the FPS had a story or not. You just wanted to shoot and kill the evil creatures in a variety of ways. But with Halo, the story was well put together. Playing as the last surviving Spartan, super soldiers created to fight the Covenant, Master Chief is set out to stop this alien race who seeks to activate a weapon, Halo, that will destroy the living throughout the galaxy.
Halo is some kind of weapon, one with vast, unimaginable power.
He's set up on a mission with his AI companion Cortana to figure out what the Covenant are plotting and foil their plans. They soon learn that these two species are not alone and a third one is introduced in a thrilling and ambiguous manner during the mission play. The idea of having multiple species likely came from the fact that Halo was originally intended to be released as an RTS, which we have learned on some of my previous videos that factions are one of the main principles of that genre. Go watch my videos. There are a lot of good things that have come out of the first Halo for the FPS genre's development, such as the in-game cutscenes, the intelligent AI, and a big improvement of graphics when comparing to FPS from the last part of this timeline, and the fact that campaigns are fully co-op and done so effectively. But we will keep it short and simple for time's sake. Halo Combat Evolved most importantly shocked us all by how well it was made despite being solely available for this new console that no one knew about, the Xbox. The risk for those who opted to buy an Xbox over a PS2 and GameCube, both manufactured by companies who have a fan base from their previous generation consoles, turned out to be worth it in the end. Halo was both successful financially, selling about 4 million copies by 2003, and critically with scores in the 9 out of 10 range.
Halo. It's finished.
No, I think we're just getting started.
For the Halo series, you can easily argue that Combat Evolved was the breakthrough game, but it wouldn't be a fluke as the next 3 games would shine just as bright, if not brighter. Halo 2 was released in 2004 for the Xbox once again, and would this installment improve on an already successful game? Of course it lived up to the hype, and a good part of that reason are some of these FPS aspects it adopted or improved on. Biggest improvement had to be the addition of the online multiplayer connectivity to Xbox Live. Essentially, you can connect with anyone that had Xbox Live from around the world. And it also included a matchmaking system, making it reasonable when you get matched up against other players with similar skill levels to you. You could also adjust the map settings to suit whatever type of game styles such as the rules, weapon settings, and team configurations. How well you succeeded in matches was also recorded and showed on your rank, with more skilled players ranking higher. The idea of clans was also introduced where friends can join in and play together as a team. In terms of overall gameplay mechanics, there wasn't anything that was completely groundbreaking for the FPS, aside that they emphasized the importance of regenerative shields even more by completely omitting the health level. So once you are in a dire situation where your shield is down, the next shot will be fatal unless you take cover and regenerate the shield. I initially resented this as the health packs were iconic to early FPS such as Doom and Wolfenstein. Though I soon realized how annoying it was when there were no more health packs to find during a level and you are nearly at 0 health. Dual wielding was introduced for this series, but that is nothing new we haven't already seen in GoldenEye earlier on the FPS timeline. It was done much better on Halo though, as you can pick up different weapons for each hand, which you couldn't do in GoldenEye. And it was easier to dual wield as any single-handed weapons could be dual wielded. There was a damage penalty on each weapon for dual wielding in order to not make it overpowered. Halo 2 kept the same gameplay mechanics as the first Halo, but just improving on it. Weapon accuracy, AI improvement from both allies and enemies, and better graphics. The campaign story I thought was even better than the first in that it showed us a playable perspective from the Covenant side. The Arbiter, a former elite commander who was deemed a traitor for not stopping the Halo's destruction, took the Arbiter's role thinking it would help him redeem his honor.
What would you have your Arbiter do?
Instead, opens up his eyes to the truth about this great journey the prophets have given him.
The sacred rings, what are they?
Weapons of last resort, built by the Forerunners to eliminate potential flood hosts, thereby rendering the parasite harmless.
Meanwhile, another Halo has been found, and Master Chief and Cortana must stop the prophets from activating them and annihilating all living species.
Master Chief, you mind telling me what you're doing on that ship?
Sir, finishing this fight.
It was great to see that Halo 2 showed us how each of the 3 factions once again played a part in the total outcome of the ending.
Fate had us meet as foes, but this ring will make us brothers.
Halo 2 sold over 8 million copies and is the best-selling first-gen Xbox game ever, and was even more successful critically than Combat Evolved, which doesn't surprise me because it kept everything similar to the first game, but improved marginally in areas that needed to, such as the online multiplayer, which at this point is almost mandatory for FPS games. Halo 2 was followed up with another game in 2007 released for Microsoft's next-generation console, Xbox 360. Halo 3 was initially released to close off a series from Combat Evolved, but of course that depended on the success of Halo 3. I knew at the back of my mind when I saw that they promoted Finish the Fight on the commercial that this wasn't going to be the last we heard of Halo. I mean, the first 2 games alone made the franchise enough money to keep it alive, so why would they just stop at 3 games? Anyways, Halo 3 was a visual orgasm for the eyes, one of few games that I played during the release, and the first thing that came out of my mouth when watching the cutscene was, wow. The water physics was super fluid and the grass and greenery looked crisp. Of course, we say that with every new game that comes out, but this was a big jump for 2007 normally. A few new things Halo 3 pitched in for the FPS was the theater mode available in both campaign and multiplayer. In this mode you can capture moments at any angle during your gameplay in a free cam. This would be a big help for those who wanted to share a cool or hilarious moment in their communities or even social media platforms such as YouTube. Forge mode was only available for the multiplayer as it allowed you to edit the map by adding and moving around objects, weapons, and items anywhere. It was different from the usual customization that is traditionally done before creating the map server. This customization can happen in real time where you can switch between the Spartan, TAC mode, and the Monitor, build mode. The multiplayer also included up to a 4-player campaign mode where each of you were assigned to play as either Master Chief, the Arbiter, or 2 other elites. In terms of gameplay, aside from adding new weapons such as the Spartan laser that requires a charge before releasing a devastating beam, equipments were introduced. I know you're probably thinking, for the FPS this was introduced back in the 90s, which is true when you look at Doom and Heretic, but in the case for Halo 3, these equipment could be deployed easily with the press of a button, and they were actually useful during the situation when you were in dire need of them. Bubble Shield protected you from projectile shots outside. The Regenerator slowly healed your shield level. The Trip Mine explodes when anyone steps near it. With every Halo game so far, it seems that the next iteration improves upon these aspects. Visual, story where we are once again left with a cliffhanger, the mechanics that seem to be smoother and more accurate every time, and of course the multiplayer which has set the standard with its real-time customization of Forge mode. With Halo 3's or any of the previous Halo 2's successes, why hasn't there been an expansion? Well, initially when they announced Halo 3 ODST, I thought it was going to expand on the story and further explain to us the cliffhanger ending. But this wasn't the case, as ODST was a completely different game taking place in between Halo 2 and 3. It dives into the aftermath when the Covenant invaded planet Earth and the shockwave that devastated the African city of New Mombasa. With Master Chief being light years away trying to stop the Halo during the events of Halo 2, you play as someone else who's a rookie, part of the Orbital Drop Shock Troopers, ODST, and who's not named. You are woken up after the shockwave and must search for your 5 other squad members that have been dispersed throughout the city. Now playing as a non-Spartan unit, you actually have some downgrades in that you cannot use any equipment, bubble shields, regenerator, and trip mines. You don't have a regenerative shield, but a regenerative stamina, and once that is depleted, your health takes damage that can only be restored unless you pick up health packs. You also can't dual wield most weapons. These disadvantages are impactful and can often cause the game to be harder in difficulty compared to other Halo games. But there comes new technology that will help you. The Visual Intelligence System Reconnaissance VISR will help you identify allies, enemies, and objects with different colored borders around the object or person with a click of a button. The ODST also need to rely more on tactical and stealth methods to eliminate the enemy, as their physical attributes do not come close to matching the superhuman Spartan. Campaign mode had a change where it was a semi-open world and certain missions could be completed in any order. You were able to explore the city of New Mombasa freely and learn about the backstory at your own pace. The overall mood and atmosphere was much darker and rain-soaked in New Mombasa, differing from the beautiful greenery and bright environment we got to see in the previous Halo games. The darker mood went well with the flashback structure, where you experience each of the missing members' flashback in a mission, which was unusual for an FPS at the time. If you do want to take a break from the story and want to enjoy non-stop action, you must check out the firefight mode that was introduced in ODST. A map can be selected, and within that map, you and possibly other cooperators must survive waves of increasingly difficult enemies. Your coordination, teamwork, and sheer will to survive was really tested in this mode. It was a fan favorite that later Halo and other FPS games would adopt. Overall, I'm not sure why it had Halo 3 as the main title to this game, because it definitely wasn't an expansion. A spin-off of Halo 2, yeah sure, we can go with that I guess. But my point is that the title really throws you off, and I'm certainly not saying the game is bad. If anything, I really did enjoy it. But it really caught me off guard at first.
We went through hell for that? Give him some meds, would you? It's important. It knows things.
Gunny, I wasn't talking about the alien.
Halo 3 ODST sold 3 million units worldwide, and overall, up until today, sits behind all of the 3 first Halos in terms of sales. But because the franchise has had unbelievable success from the start, it can be hard to match that. I also think there were fans that didn't like the idea of a Halo without playing as Master Chief, who is iconic to the franchise.
Wake me when you need me.
In terms of its critique, which was mostly low 9s to the high 8s out of 10, it was a noticeable dip from the first 3 Halo games. Most complaints came from the game's outdated graphics by still using the same Halo 3 game engine in 2007. Another complaint was just a lack of content, given that it was sold as much as a normal game upon release. The very obvious complaint was the unit and weapon variety that changed minimally. With a few shortcomings aside, these changes, and in some cases innovative features Halo ODST brought, were a new light to what the FPS can potentially become in the future. The story of the Halo games thus far have gone in a forward timeline, but what of the past? What happened to the Spartans, and why are they scarce in Halo 1 to 3? Well, with now the 5th FPS installment of the series released in 2010, Halo Reach is a prequel to the story of Combat Evolved that takes place light years away on the planet Reach, a UNSC colony. Your goal as Noble 6, the newest member of the Spartan team called the Noble Team, is to defend Reach from the invasion of the Covenant. With Halo Reach once again not having you play as Master Chief, it was nerve-wracking that maybe they did end the Halo story with the 3rd. Old story, new game that also comes with its fair share of FPS innovation. First was the change of equipment from a consumable to now an armor pickup that had different abilities. There was a sprint, camouflage, jetpack to have you hover in the air, drop shield which acts similarly to the bubble shield but can heal allies' shields that are inside the dome, armor lock, a brief invincibility that immobilizes you, and hologram which projects an image of the operator running ahead, confusing the enemy into firing at the hologram. These abilities only last several seconds, but can be used multiple times once the cooldown period is complete. The armors relieved you from having to find equipment refills that had finite usage. The health mechanic reverted to the same method as Combat Evolved, where there is a regenerative shield. Once the shield was removed, each hit that is taken during this vulnerable moment damages your health, and death is imminent once you lose it all. A big change has come to the multiplayer, where a new mode called Invasion is available. You are randomly put in either a 6-member team of elites who must invade to disable a shield, or as a Spartan 6 team who defends against the elite invasion. It works in phases where the invaders must complete an objective to move on to the next phase out of the 3, and win if the objectives in all 3 phases are complete.
Elites win.
If the defenders manage to foil the objective of the invaders in any phase, they will be named winners.
Spartans win.
The firefight mode that was successful in ODST was brought back and refined to have more customization, precise map editing, and even scripting elements. You can tell the AI of both your squad and the enemy has been further improved to do less stupid things. Graphics were greatly improved from ODST, having mostly due to the fact the engine changed from Halo 3's outdated and limited version. A few weapons were introduced such as the DMR, a mid to long range semi-automatic rifle for the UNSC, and the Needle Rifle, also a mid to long range semi-automatic rifle for the Covenant. Both of these are altered versions of previous weapons. The Battle Rifle changed from a 3-shot burst, and a Needler now ranging farther with faster projectiles. I feel as though Halo Reach was targeted towards a multiplayer audience. I still enjoyed the campaigns, don't get me wrong, but I didn't see enough FPS innovation coming out of it that impressed me like the 4 other Halos we covered. I also might be biased because I prefer campaign mode over multiplayer, so deal with it.
Tell him to make it count.
Halo Reach has sold almost 10 million copies to date, passing all previous installments except Halo 3, which has a significant lead over it. Critically, it had all 9s and above out of 10, in line with the first 3 Halos, and did much better than ODST. Halo Reach is best described as bittersweet, because it was Bungie's last Halo game that they would develop, having been part of the Halo series since the beginning of the decade. A lot of us were worried about the direction of the franchise when 343, a newly created developing team that we knew nothing about, took over the responsibility. We have seen this before with other franchises where devs change, and it often has led to unfavorable results. But that will be for another video to cover on Halo's second decade of games led by 343. The first decade of Halo games were monumental to the FPS for this time frame. They set the bar for the story and lore that no other FPS can come close to.
What he'd want us to do.
The visuals were top-notch for their time for each of their games, evolving the multiplayer to meet the needs of gamers who need to stay connected with friends across the world, refining gameplay mechanics to balance the game's difficulty, and remove annoying repetitive disadvantages from early FPS. When I say this, I really do believe Halo changed the FPS forever. We will stop here for part 3 of the FPS timeline that covered the first decade of Halo games. I decided to do something a little different with my timeline videos and covered a franchise instead. I just felt the need to put all the Halo games together to fully show what they brought to the FPS genre. Growing up, this was my favorite FPS franchise. Make no mistake though, Halo was not the only FPS during this time frame that had success. Call of Duty, which I never got into, was just as big and has a place of its own for the FPS. Part 4, I want to cover Call of Duty, which will be interesting because I've hardly played any of their games. But most importantly, let me know what you think of this video, or this channel in general. It has been a struggle making videos that people want to watch, so any advice or suggestions would be appreciated. I've started making shorts that cover random fun games you might have missed. Check those out too, it might interest you. Thanks for the support, and later days.